Christopher Williams stood before the full-length mirror in his walk-in closet, adjusting his Hermes tie for the third time. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Lincoln Park penthouse, the Willis Tower gleamed against the December sky, its lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled over Chicago. "You look nervous," Amanda said from the doorway. His wife wore a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her tone wasn't concerned. It was observational, clinical. "Just want everything perfect. It's Bradley's first time here for Christmas." Bradley Morrison, 70 years old, Chicago real estate titan, Amanda's father, the man Christopher needed to impress more than anyone else on earth. Amanda studied him with those calculating eyes that had once seemed sophisticated but now just made him feel measured, weighed, evaluated. "He's just my father, Chris, not the Pope. Your father controls half the commercial development in downtown Chicago. And you want the other half." Christopher didn't answer. He smoothed his jacket, Tom Ford naturally, and checked his Rolex. 6:47 p.m. guests would arrive at 7. What Amanda didn't know, what nobody knew, was that 2 weeks ago, Christopher had met Bradley at the University Club. Over single malt scotch and Cuban cigars, he'd pitched something audacious, a merger between Williams Construction and Morrison Properties. Bradley had raised one silver eyebrow. "Does your father know about this proposal?" "My father doesn't need to know until the deal is signed. I'm the CEO. That eyebrow had risen higher. "Are you?" The conversation had ended ambiguously. No yes, no no. Just, "Let me think about it, Christopher. We'll talk soon." Tonight was soon. Tonight, Christopher needed to show Bradley Morrison that he was his own man, strong enough to make executive decisions, bold enough to chart a new course, ruthless enough, if necessary, to go around his father. He walked to the living room where their housekeeper had arranged everything according to Amanda's Pinterest-perfect specifications. White roses, gold-trimmed plates, a 20-pound prime rib rotating in the oven, a $1,300 bottle of Chateau Margaux breathing on the bar. The apartment itself was a testament to borrowed wealth, $750,000 mortgage, his father's signature on the guarantee. The Mercedes S-Class in the garage downstairs, $1,800 monthly lease, his father's credit backing it, the corporate Amex in his wallet, $180,000 in accumulated charges, all secured by Richard Williams's personal assets. Christopher had never thought about it much. The money had always just been there, like air, like gravity. "Dad's here," Amanda called from the intercom. Christopher felt his stomach tighten. Not his father. Hers. But then he heard voices in the hallway, 2 voices, and his actual stomach dropped. The door opened. Amanda's parents entered first, Bradley Morrison in a charcoal Brioni suit and Carol Morrison in Chanel. But behind them, carrying 2 shopping bags stuffed with wrapped presents, came Richard Williams, Christopher's father, 68 years old, silver hair still thick, shoulders still broad from 45 years of construction work, first with his hands, then with his mind. He wore a simple navy blazer and khakis, probably the same outfit he'd worn to Christmas dinner for the past decade. "Grandpa!" 2 voices shrieked from the stairs. Emma, 13, flew down first, her blonde ponytail streaming behind her. She crashed into Richard with the unself-conscious affection of a kid who still thought hugging was cool. Brandon followed more slowly, 16, all gangly limbs and affected teenage indifference, but his face lit up when Richard pulled him into a one-armed hug. "Brought you 2 something special," Richard said, his voice warm in a way Christopher suddenly realized he hadn't heard directed at himself in months, maybe years. "You didn't have to bring gifts, Dad," Christopher said, forcing a smile. Richard finally looked at his son. Really looked at him. And Christopher felt something he couldn't name. Something like being seen through, x-rayed, assessed, and found wanting. "I wanted to," Richard said simply. Then he turned back to the kids. "But you can't open them until after dinner. Your grandmother made me promise to teach you delayed gratification." Emma's smile faltered for just a second. They all knew your grandmother meant Susan, Richard's wife, Christopher's mother, who'd been dead for 5 years. Ovarian cancer, 57 years old, gone in 8 months. "I'll put these under the tree," Richard said, heading toward the living room with his shopping bags. Bradley Morrison watched this entire exchange with the focused attention of a man who made his fortune by reading people. Christopher noticed. Of course he noticed. Bradley noticed everything. "Christopher," Bradley said, extending his hand. "Beautiful home." "Thank you for coming, Mr. Morrison." Christopher gripped the handshake firmly. Not too hard. That was try hard. Not too soft. That was weak. Just right. Executive level. "Please, call me Bradley. We're family." Were they, though? In 15 years of marriage, Bradley had never invited Christopher to call him anything but Mr. Morrison, or, on informal occasions, Sir. This sudden first-name familiarity felt like a test. From the living room, Christopher heard Richard's voice. "Emma, honey, what's this? A science trophy?" "I got first place in the robotics competition. I didn't tell you because I wanted to surprise you at dinner." "That's my girl. You know, when I was building my first house, we didn't have robots. We had slide rules and prayer." The kids laughed, real laughs, not the polite titters they gave Christopher when he tried to be funny. Amanda appeared with a tray of champagne flutes. "Shall we move to the dining room?" The dining room. Christopher had spent 3 hours yesterday personally arranging the place settings. 8 seats around the custom walnut table he'd had imported from Italy. At the head, the power position, the seat with the view of both the lake and the skyline. The seat where Richard Williams had sat at every family dinner for the past 5 years, ever since Susan died, and these gatherings moved from the family home in Oak Park to Christopher's penthouse. But tonight, Christopher had different plans. They filed in. Richard moved naturally toward the head of the table, the way water moves downhill, muscle memory, tradition. Christopher's throat went dry. Bradley Morrison stopped just behind Richard, admiring the view through the windows. "Magnificent sightlines," he murmured. "You can see all the way to the Navy Pier." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a suggestion. But Christopher heard it anyway, the unspoken expectation, the test. "Show me you're your own man. Show me you can make hard choices. Show me you have the spine to run a company." Richard pulled out the chair. "Dad," Christopher heard himself say. His voice sounded strange in his own ears, distant. "I need you to move." The room went silent, not quiet, silent, the kind of silence that has weight and texture. Richard froze mid-sit, his hand still on the chair back. "What?" "That seat," Christopher gestured vaguely. "It's for Mr. Morrison tonight." Amanda's face went pale. Carol Morrison's eyes widened. Emma stopped texting. Brandon looked up from his phone, actually paying attention for the first time all evening. "Chris, I've sat here for 5 years. Richard said quietly. "Since your mother, I know, Dad, but tonight is different. Mr. Morrison is our guest of honor." Guest of honor. The words tasted like ashes even as Christopher spoke them. Richard straightened slowly. His hands released the chair. At 68, he still stood tall, 6'1", same height as Christopher. But now, somehow, he seemed to tower. "Christopher," he said. Not Chris. Not son. Christopher. Full name. "Are you serious?" This was the moment, the inflection point. Christopher could laugh it off, could say he was joking, could pull out another chair for Bradley and seat his father where tradition demanded. But Bradley was watching. Amanda was watching, and Christopher had spent 42 years being Richard Williams's son, living in Richard Williams's shadow, waiting for permission to be his own man. "Dad, move." The words came out harsher than he intended, but once spoken they couldn't be unspoken. Richard didn't move. He just stood there, his hands now hanging at his sides. In the chandelier light, Christopher saw that his father's hands were shaking. Not from fear, not from weakness, from something else. "Please," Christopher added, though the word came out more like a command than a request. "Grandpa, you can sit here next to me," Emma said quickly, her voice high and nervous. She was smart enough to sense the wrongness of this moment, even if she couldn't articulate it. But Richard still didn't move. He looked at his son, really looked at him, and Christopher saw something in his father's eyes he'd never seen before. Disappointment? No. Worse than that, recognition. The look of a man who'd been harboring a suspicion for years and just had it confirmed. "Christopher," Richard said softly, "do you know what you're doing?" "I'm hosting a dinner, and I've made a seating decision." "No." Richard's voice was still quiet, but there was steel beneath it now. "You're making a choice. Make sure you understand what you're choosing." "Dad, don't make this difficult." That's when Christopher's hand moved. Later, he wouldn't remember deciding to do it. The decision and the action happened simultaneously, like a sneeze or a flinch. He reached out, placed both hands on his father's shoulders, and pushed, not gently, not a guiding hand, a shove, a real, forceful shove. Richard Williams, 68 years old, stumbled backward. His heel caught on the chair leg, his arms windmilled, grasping for balance that wasn't there, and he fell. The sound of his body hitting the hardwood floor was the loudest thing Christopher had ever heard. Silence. Complete, absolute, suffocating silence. Then Emma screamed, "Grandpa!" She rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside Richard. Brandon was frozen, his phone still in his hand, his mouth open in shock. Amanda had both hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Carol Morrison gasped. Bradley Morrison's expression didn't change at all, which was somehow worse than shock. He simply looked down at Richard on the floor, then at Christopher, then back to Richard, assessing, calculating. And Richard? He lay there for a moment, one hand on the floor, breathing hard. Not from injury, Christopher could see that, from something else, from the sheer, stunning reality of what had just happened. "I'm okay, sweetie," Richard said to Emma, his voice steady despite everything. "I'm okay." Brandon finally moved, helping Emma get their grandfather to his feet. Richard stood slowly, brushing off his slacks. There was a red mark on his cheek where it had struck the floor, and Christopher felt his stomach lurch. What have I done? But he couldn't take it back, couldn't undo it. The moment existed now, solid and real and irrevocable. Richard stood fully upright. He looked at Christopher, one long, appraising look that seemed to contain entire conversations they'd never have. Then he looked at Emma and Brandon, both of whom were still holding his arms like he might fall again. "It's all right," he said gently. "Grandpa's fine. Just lost my balance for a second." But everyone in that room knew that was a lie. Richard Williams hadn't lost his balance in 40 years of construction sites and high-rise projects. His son had pushed him to the ground. "Please, Richard, sit here," Carol Morrison said quickly, pulling out a chair at the side of the table. A side chair, not the head. "Are you hurt? Should we call—" "I'm fine, Carol. Thank you." Bradley Morrison had already seated himself at the head of the table. He didn't acknowledge what had happened, didn't comment on it. He simply sat down, unfolded his napkin, and said, "What a lovely table setting, Amanda. You have exquisite taste." Christopher stood there, his hands still raised from the push, as if his body hadn't caught up with his brain yet. Richard moved to the side chair, sat down, smoothed his napkin across his lap. And that was that. Dinner proceeded. Amanda served the first course, a butternut squash soup she'd spent 3 hours making, with shaking hands. Brandon stared at his bowl without eating. Emma kept glancing at her grandfather, then at her father, confusion and hurt warring on her 13-year-old face. "The European markets are quite volatile right now," Bradley said, as if nothing had happened. "Real estate development requires nimble thinking." "Exactly," Christopher heard himself say. His voice sounded normal. How was that possible? "That's why I believe a merger between our companies could be incredibly beneficial. We could weather the volatility together." He was doing it, actually pitching the merger at the dinner table, right after pushing his father to the floor. Richard said nothing. He lifted his spoon, tasted the soup, set it down. His face was utterly expressionless. "A merger?" Bradley's eyebrow arched again, that trademark gesture. "That's an interesting proposal, Christopher, very ambitious." "Williams Construction has the engineering expertise. Morrison Properties has the capital and the development portfolio. Together, we'd be unstoppable." "Williams Construction," Richard said softly. It was the first time he'd spoken since sitting down. "Interesting that you're offering to merge a company you don't own." Christopher felt ice water in his veins. "I'm the CEO, Dad. I have the authority." "You have a title," Richard interrupted, his voice still quiet. "Authority is something else entirely." Bradley watched this exchange with the intensity of a man watching a chess match. Christopher couldn't read his expression. "Perhaps we should discuss this another time," Amanda interjected desperately. "Let's just enjoy the meal." They ate, or pretended to eat. Christopher mechanically lifted fork to mouth, chewed, swallowed. The prime rib tasted like cardboard. The $1,300 wine tasted like vinegar. Brandon excused himself halfway through the main course, claiming he felt sick. He didn't look at Christopher as he left. Emma picked at her food, her eyes red. "And Richard?" Richard ate slowly, methodically, but he didn't speak again. Not for the rest of the meal. At 9:47 p.m., Richard stood. "I should go. Early morning tomorrow." "Oh, but we haven't had dessert yet," Amanda protested weakly. "I'm not hungry anymore. Thank you for having me." He kissed Emma on the head, squeezed Brandon's shoulder. The boy had come back downstairs, shamefaced. Then Richard walked toward the door. Christopher followed him into the foyer. "Dad, wait!" Richard turned. Up close, Christopher could see the red mark on his cheek had darkened to a bruise. "Don't," Richard said simply. "I just wanted to—" "I said don't." Richard's voice was harder now. "Christopher, I'm going to leave now. I'm going to drive home. And I'm going to think very carefully about what happened tonight. I suggest you do the same. It was just a seating arrangement." "No." Richard held up one hand. "It wasn't, and we both know it." He opened the door. "Dad." But Richard was already gone, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that felt like a gunshot. Christopher stood in the empty foyer, his reflection staring back at him from the mirror. He looked the same. Same face, same expensive clothes, same everything. So why did he feel like he'd just stepped off a cliff? Christopher returned to the dining room to find Bradley and Carol preparing to leave as well. "Lovely evening," Bradley said, shaking Christopher's hand. His grip was firm but perfunctory. "We'll be in touch about that proposal." Was that good? Bad? Christopher couldn't tell. After they left, Amanda turned on him. What the hell was that? It was necessary. Necessary? Christopher, you pushed your father to the ground. I needed Bradley to see that I'm my own man, that I can make hard decisions. Hard decisions? Amanda's voice rose. That wasn't a hard decision. That was cruelty. That was... She stopped, shaking her head. I need to check on the kids. She left. Christopher stood alone in the dining room, surrounded by the ruins of his perfect dinner. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tomorrow, my office. 9 a.m. Don't be late. B.M. Bradley. A meeting. That was good, right? That meant the merger was still on the table. Christopher poured himself another glass of the Chateau Margaux. His hand shook slightly as he lifted it to his lips. In the guest bathroom, 20 minutes later, Christopher locked the door and stared at himself in the mirror. He'd come here to escape Amanda's silent judgment, the kid's confused hurt. He splashed cold water on his face. His phone rang. Richard. Christopher stared at the screen, paralyzed. Should he answer, apologize, explain? He let it go to voicemail. A minute later it rang again. Richard again. Again, Christopher let it ring. Third time, fourth time, fifth time. Each call felt like an accusation. On the sixth call, Christopher turned off his phone entirely. He sat on the closed toilet lid, head in his hands, and tried to understand what he'd just done, tried to feel something other than this strange numbness. He'd pushed his father, his 68-year-old father, to the ground in front of his children. For what? For Bradley Morrison's approval? For a business deal? No. Be honest. For power. For the feeling of being in control. For 30 seconds of being the alpha male in his own home. Was it worth it? Christopher didn't know. He couldn't think clearly. Everything felt fuzzy and distant, like he was watching his own life through frosted glass. He stayed in that bathroom for 45 minutes before Amanda knocked. Christopher, the kids want to say goodnight. He found them in Emma's room. Brandon was there too, sitting on his sister's bed in that way teenagers do when they're scared and regressing to childhood comfort. Night, Dad, Emma said quietly. She didn't meet his eyes. Night, sweetheart. Is Grandpa okay? She asked. He's fine. He didn't look fine. Emma, why did you push him? Her voice broke. He's old, Dad. You could have really hurt him. Christopher had no answer. What could he possibly say? Brandon spoke up, his voice cold. I texted Grandpa to make sure he got home safe. He said he's fine. No thanks to you. Brandon, watch your tone. Why? You gonna push me too? The words hung in the air like a slap. Christopher left the room. At 11:30 p.m., he stood in his home office looking out at the Chicago skyline. The city glittered beneath him. Thousands of lights, millions of people, all of them with fathers, most of them probably managing not to assault theirs. His phone, back on now, showed 7 missed calls from Richard, 3 voicemails he was too afraid to listen to. But there was also the text from Bradley. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Christopher clung to that. The merger, the deal, the future. That's what mattered. That's what tonight was about. He repeated it to himself like a mantra as he climbed into bed next to Amanda, who was pointedly facing away from him. It was necessary. It was strategic. It was the right move. But as he lay in the darkness, listening to the distant sounds of the city, Christopher Williams couldn't shake one terrible thought. His father's eyes. That look. That recognition. The look of a man who'd just learned something irreversible about his son and didn't like what he'd learned. Christopher woke at 9:17 a.m. to his phone vibrating like a trapped hornet. He grabbed it, groggy, eyes still crusted with sleep. Unknown number, probably a spam call. He almost declined, then remembered. Bradley Morrison, the meeting. 9 a.m., he answered. Hello? Mr. Williams, this is Jennifer Park from Chase Bank Mortgage Division. I'm calling regarding your residential loan, account ending in 4782. Christopher sat up, suddenly alert. My mortgage? Is there a problem? Sir, at 6:03 a.m. this morning, your primary guarantor executed a formal cancellation of guarantee. Your loan is now in immediate default status. The room tilted sideways. What? What guarantor? Mr. Richard Williams, sir. Per the terms of your mortgage agreement, without guarantor support, you have 72 hours to remit full payment of $753,000, or foreclosure proceedings will commence. Christopher's throat closed. $753,000? I don't have that kind of... Then I strongly recommend you contact a bankruptcy attorney immediately. You'll receive physical documentation via courier today. Happy holidays, Mr. Williams. Click. Christopher stared at the phone. This was a mistake. Had to be. His father wouldn't... The phone rang again. Bank of America. Mr. Williams, this is Marcus Chen from Auto Finance Division. Your Mercedes S-Class lease agreement has been flagged for immediate repossession due to guarantor cancellation. We're dispatching a tow service to your address this afternoon. Wait, you can't just... Sir, without the guarantee, you don't meet our minimum credit requirements. Please have the vehicle keys ready and any personal items removed. The tow truck will arrive between 10 a.m. and noon. Another call. Wells Fargo. Your corporate line of credit has been suspended. American Express. Your account shows an outstanding balance of $182,000, now due in full. U.S. Bank. This is a courtesy notification regarding collection proceedings. Citibank. Your joint account with Richard Williams has been frozen pending debt resolution. The calls came in waves, 23 in 47 minutes, each one a hammer blow, each one destroying another piece of his financial life. Christopher sat on the edge of the bed in his boxer shorts and undershirt, phone pressed to his ear, watching his entire existence collapse in real time. Your business credit card is canceled effective immediately. We're initiating garnishment procedures. You have 14 days to vacate the premises. Amanda appeared in the doorway, still in her robe, face pale as milk. Christopher, someone called the house phone from Mercedes. They said, I know. His voice sounded hollow, distant. They're taking the car. Taking it? What do you mean, taking it? My father canceled all the guarantees, the mortgage, the car, the credit cards, everything. Everything, but that's... Amanda sat down heavily on the bed. That's everything we have. I know. She stared at him, really stared. Christopher, what did you do? You were there. You saw what happened. No. Her voice sharpened. Nobody destroys their own son over a dinner party seating arrangement. What else? What aren't you telling me? Before Christopher could answer, his phone buzzed. Email notification. He opened it with shaking hands. From Robert Sinclair, rsinclair@williamsconstruction.com. To you, Christopher Williams. Subject, employment termination, effective immediately. Christopher, the Board of Directors of Williams Construction has voted unanimously to terminate your employment, effective 12:01 a.m., December 25, 2024. Grounds for termination: breach of fiduciary duty, unauthorized access to confidential merger documents, chronic misuse of company resources, irrevocable loss of confidence from ownership. Your final paycheck, prorated through December 24, 2024, will be deposited within 48 hours. Health insurance coverage terminates January 1st. COBRA information attached. All company property must be returned to HR by 5 p.m. today. Your personal effects have been removed from the executive office and placed in storage room B. You have until December 31st to collect them, by appointment only, with security escort. Do not contact current employees or clients. Do not enter company premises except to retrieve personal items. Robert Sinclair. Chief Executive Officer, Williams Construction, Inc. Christopher read the title 3 times. Chief Executive Officer. Robert wasn't COO anymore. Robert was CEO, which meant Christopher was nothing. They fired me, he whispered. Amanda took the phone from his hand, read the email. Her face went from pale to gray. Christopher, how bad is this? He did the math in his head, or tried to. The numbers kept slipping away like water through his fingers. The penthouse, we're being foreclosed on. 3 days to vacate. 3 days? Where are we supposed to? The car's being repossessed this morning. All our credit cards are canceled. My salary's gone. He looked at her. We have maybe $4,000 in accessible cash. That's it. $4,000, Christopher, that's 1 month's expenses. I know. She stood up abruptly, pacing. Okay, we need to think. We can move in with my parents temporarily. Amanda, they have that guest house. It's small, but it's something. Amanda. She stopped, looked at him. Your parents aren't going to want me there, not after last night. Silence. I'll call my mother, Amanda said finally. Her voice was cold now, practical. See what she says. She left. Christopher heard her in the next room, voice low and urgent. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Williams, this is Maxwell Chen from Drake & Associates. We represent Richard Williams. You are hereby notified. Any attempt to contact our client via phone, email, text, social media, or in person will be considered harassment and will result in legal action including restraining orders. Acknowledge receipt. Christopher typed with numb fingers. Received. His father had lawyered up, against him, against his own son. Amanda came back, her face unreadable. I talked to my mother. And? The kids and I can stay in the guest house. The kids and you. Yes. Not me. My father was very clear, Christopher. After what you did to Richard, you're not welcome on his property. Something cracked inside Christopher's chest. So that's it? You're just leaving? What do you want me to do? Amanda's voice rose. We're being evicted in 3 days. We have no money, no car, no insurance. I have to protect Emma and Brandon. They're my kids too. And you should have thought about that before you pushed their grandfather to the ground, she was shouting now. Emma cried herself to sleep last night. Brandon called you a fucking coward. His words, Christopher, not mine. What was I supposed to tell them? Don't worry, kids. Daddy just assaulted Grandpa for business reasons? Christopher had no answer. Amanda wiped her eyes. I have movers coming at 2 o'clock. I'm taking the kids. You can figure out whatever this is. Where am I supposed to go? She looked at him with something like pity. That's not my problem anymore, Christopher. At 11:30 a.m., Christopher took an Uber to the Williams Construction Building in River North. The Mercedes was already gone, towed at 10:47 a.m. while Emma and Brandon watched from their bedroom window. The building looked the same, 22 floors of steel and glass, the Williams Construction logo gleaming on the facade. His grandfather had designed that logo in 1979. Security let him through. That was something. He took the elevator to the 5th floor, the executive suite. The doors opened. Robert Sinclair sat in Christopher's office, behind Christopher's desk, reviewing what looked like construction permits. He glanced up as Christopher approached. Christopher? Robert's face was carefully neutral. I was hoping you wouldn't come in today. That's my office. Was your office. Christopher walked to the doorway. The brass nameplate that had read Christopher Williams, CEO, was gone. In its place, a new plate, still shiny. Robert Sinclair, Chief Executive Officer. Inside, the office was stripped bare, his diplomas, gone. The photo of him with Emma and Brandon at Navy Pier, gone. The model of the Riverside Plaza building, the first project he'd managed, gone. Even the bonsai tree he'd maintained for 3 years, gone. The desk was empty except for one thing, a single piece of paper, Williams' construction letterhead, handwritten in his father's unmistakable script, "This seat is not for you." Christopher picked it up. The paper trembled in his hands, his own words, from last night, thrown back at him like acid. "Where are my things?" "Storage room B. You have until 5 p.m. today. After that, they'll be disposed of." "Robert, please. You've known my father for 20 years. Talk to him. This is insane." Over a dinner party, Robert stood. He was 54, built like a linebacker, with silver in his hair and eyes that had seen 3 market crashes and 100 failed projects. "It's not about the dinner party, Christopher." "Then what? It's about who you are." Robert's voice wasn't angry. It was disappointed, which was worse. "My wife Diane was there last night, helping with the catering. She called me at 10 p.m. crying, said it was the most horrible thing she'd ever witnessed. I just pushed him a little. You shoved a 68-year-old man to the ground in front of his grandchildren to impress your father-in-law." Robert shook his head. "Christopher, your father gave you everything. This job, this company, every opportunity you've ever had, and you repaid him by trying to steal it out from under him." "Steal it? I was trying to grow the company. By negotiating a merger behind his back, using confidential documents you accessed illegally, pitching deals you had no authority to make." Robert's voice hardened. "Patricia flagged those file downloads 2 weeks ago. We've known what you were doing, Christopher. Your father's known." The room spun. He knew? "He wanted to see how far you'd go. Turns out, pretty damn far." Christopher felt sick. "Robert, I have no money, no job. They're foreclosing on my apartment. What am I supposed to do?" "What everyone else does when they lose everything." Robert's voice softened slightly. "You start over. You work. You prove you're more than a last name. I'm 42 years old. I was 50 when I lost everything in 2008. Bankruptcy, divorce, rock bottom. Your father gave me a job when nobody else would. He saw something worth saving." Robert looked at Christopher steadily. "Question is there something in you worth saving? Or are you just Richard Williams's entitled son?" Christopher had no answer. Security escorted him out at 11:52 a.m. He carried a cardboard box with his belongings, some photos, a coffee mug Emma had made in 2nd grade, his college diploma. His reserved parking spot, C. Williams, Executive, was already empty, the sign removed. Christopher's phone buzzed as he stood on the sidewalk. Text from Bradley Morrison. "Christopher, after careful consideration of last night's events, I've decided to pursue other partnership opportunities. I wish you well. B.M. Cold, professional, final." Christopher's fingers moved before his brain caught up. He called Bradley's cell. Bradley answered on the 3rd ring. "Christopher." "Bradley, please, let me explain about last night." "There's nothing to explain. I saw everything I needed to see. The merger, the plans we discussed. We never discussed anything, Christopher. You pitched an idea. I said I'd think about it. That's not the same as an agreement. But I thought—" "You thought what?" Bradley's voice was ice. "That I'd be impressed by you humiliating your father? That shoving an old man proved you were strong?" "He's not old. He's only 68. Christopher, I'm 72. If my son-in-law pushed me down, I'd have him arrested." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Please, enlighten me. Give me the version where you're not the villain." Silence. Bradley continued. "I've built a career on one principle: integrity. I don't work with people I can't trust. And Christopher, any man who betrays his own father will absolutely betray me when it's convenient." "I didn't betray." "You tried to merge his company without his knowledge or consent. You pitched it to me as if you had authority you don't have. You physically assaulted him to make me think you were decisive. How is that not betrayal?" "Bradley, please. I've lost everything. The apartment, the car, my job. No, you threw everything away. That's different. What about Amanda, Emma, and Brandon? They're your grandchildren. And they'll always be my grandchildren. Amanda's moving home today. The kids are welcome any time. But you?" Bradley paused. "You're not welcome in my home until you become someone worth welcoming." How long will that take? I have no idea. That's entirely up to you. Christopher's voice cracked. So that's it? You're just done with me? Christopher, I called your father 10 days ago when you first pitched me that merger. I told him everything, your proposal, your timeline, your plan to go around him. The world stopped. You told him? Of course I did. Richard and I have been colleagues for 30 years. Did you really think I'd conspire against him? But the dinner was a test. Richard wanted to see if you'd really go through with it. If you'd actually humiliate him to impress me. Bradley's voice hardened. Congratulations. You passed his test by failing spectacularly. Christopher couldn't breathe. He set me up. No, Christopher, he gave you a choice. You could have seated me anywhere. You could have honored your father. You chose to push him to the floor. That was all you. This is manipulation. This is consequences. Bradley's tone was final. And Christopher? I am partnering with someone. Richard and I are meeting next week to discuss a real merger, Williams Construction and Morrison Properties. The deal you wanted. It's happening, just without you. The line went dead. Christopher stood on the corner of Wacker and Wells, phone in his hand, watching the city move around him. Business people in suits, tourists taking photos, everyone with somewhere to be, everyone except him. Christopher returned to the penthouse at 1:47 p.m. to find a moving truck parked outside. In the lobby, surrounded by suitcases and boxes, stood Amanda, Emma, and Brandon. "Dad!" Emma ran to him. Her eyes were red and swollen. "They're taking all our stuff." Christopher hugged his daughter. She felt so small, so fragile. When had she gotten this thin? "It's temporary, sweetie. We'll figure this out." "No, we won't." Brandon stood against the wall, arms crossed, face hard. "Mom told us. She and Emma and me are going to Grandma and Grandpa Morrison's. You're going somewhere else." "Brandon, it's true, isn't it?" Amanda approached with a manila folder. "Christopher, I need you to sign these." "What are they?" "Temporary separation agreement. I get primary custody. You get supervised visitation once you have stable housing and income." "Supervised? Amanda, these are my children. These are children who watched their father assault their grandfather." Her voice was flat, legal. "Forgive me for being cautious. I didn't assault anyone." "Yes, you did." Brandon pushed off the wall. "I was there, Dad. I saw it. You pushed Grandpa Richard. He fell. That's assault." Emma started crying. "Why did you do it, Daddy? Grandpa Richard never hurt anyone. He was just trying to sit down." Christopher knelt in front of his daughter. "Em, sweetheart, sometimes adults have to make hard decisions." "It wasn't a hard decision." Brandon's voice cut through. "It was a mean decision. You wanted to impress Grandpa Morrison, so you hurt Grandpa Richard. That's called being a bully." "Brandon, watch your tone. Or what? You gonna push me too?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Amanda put her hand on Brandon's shoulder. "Enough. Kids, get in the car. Your grandmother's waiting." "Which grandmother?" Brandon asked pointedly. "The one whose husband isn't a coward." They loaded into Amanda's Range Rover. Emma gave Christopher one last hug, desperate, clinging. Brandon walked past without a word. Christopher stood on the sidewalk as the moving truck pulled away, followed by his family in the Rover. Through the back window, he could see Emma crying, Brandon staring straight ahead. His phone buzzed. "Building management. Mr. Williams. Per foreclosure proceedings initiated by Chase Bank, you have 72 hours to vacate Unit 2204. All belongings must be removed by 5 p.m. December 28th. Building access will be terminated at that time. 72 hours, 3 days to figure out his entire life." By 6 p.m., Christopher had called everyone he could think of. His college roommate, "Man, I heard what happened. That's rough, but I can't really, His former business partner, "Chris, I'd love to help, but getting involved in family stuff isn't." His golf buddy, "Have you tried apologizing to your dad?" Nobody wanted to touch him. He was radioactive. He ended up at Motel 6 near O'Hare, $89 per night, cash only. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. The bedspread had burns. The TV was bolted to the dresser. Christopher sat on the bed and checked his bank account, $3,847.52. That was everything. His entire accessible net worth, $89 per night, was $2,670 per month. His money would last 6 weeks, maybe 7 if he ate ramen. Then what? His phone buzzed. Text from Emma. "Dad, are you okay? Where are you staying? I'm scared." Christopher stared at the message. What could he possibly say? "Don't worry, honey. Daddy's at a Roach Motel near the airport." He typed, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't worry about me. I love you so much." Another text. Brandon. "Mom says we can't see you until you get stable housing and a job. Honestly? Fair." Christopher didn't reply. He lay back on the cheap mattress and stared at the water-stained ceiling. Pipes rattled in the walls. Someone next door was watching a game show, volume maxed out. His phone rang one last time. Unknown number. He answered. "Hello? Mr. Williams, this is Maxwell Chen from Drake & Associates. I'm calling to reiterate the cease and contact order regarding Richard Williams. Any violation will result in immediate legal action. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Then we have nothing further to discuss. Goodbye." Click. Christopher turned off the lights. Through the thin curtains, he could see planes taking off from O'Hare, red and white lights climbing into the dark sky, people going places, people going home. For the first time since childhood, Christopher Williams cried, not quiet tears, ugly, gasping sobs that shook his whole body. 24 hours ago, he'd had everything: career, home, family, future. Now he had $3,847 in a motel room. He pulled the scratchy blanket over his head and tried to sleep. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same thing: his father on the floor. The red mark on his cheek, the look in his eyes, that terrible look of recognition. Of a father finally understanding his son and being disappointed by what he saw. Outside, the planes kept taking off. Inside, Christopher Williams hit rock bottom, and tomorrow, he'd have to figure out how to survive it. March 2025. Chicago. Christopher Williams clocked in at 11:04 p.m., 4 minutes late. His supervisor, Brenda Kozlowski, gave him a look. "Traffic," he muttered, changing into his blue janitor's uniform in the locker room. Chicago clean team, $13 per hour, night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., commercial office cleaning. 3 months ago, Christopher had been CEO of a construction company. Now he mopped floors in the buildings he used to have meetings in. His route tonight: Willis Tower, floors 38 to 42, executive suites, corner offices with lake views. He pushed his cart to the elevator, loaded with cleaning supplies that smelled like pine and chemicals. His co-workers were Maria, 52, from El Salvador, 2 jobs, Tyrell, 28, saving for college, and Janet, 67, husband's pension wasn't enough. They didn't know who he used to be. To them, he was just Chris, the new guy who worked hard, didn't complain, and volunteered for bathroom duty. His apartment, studio in Pilsen, $650 per month, mattress on floor, hot plate, shower that only ran hot for 3 minutes, but it was his, paid with money he earned, monthly budget, rent, $650, food, $180, rice, beans, eggs, instant coffee, CTA pass, $75, phone, $45, prepaid, cheapest plan, total income, $2,080, 160 hours at $13. Savings, $130. He'd lost 28 pounds. His hands were calloused. He looked 50, not 42. But something strange had happened over these 3 months. He'd started to feel lighter. Not happy, not proud, but no longer crushed by shame. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m., he called Emma and Brandon from a payphone at Millennium Park. Saved his cell phone minutes. "Dad, how's work?" Emma always asked. "Good, sweetie. How's school?" She'd tell him about robotics club, about her science project. Brandon would grunt hello, talk about basketball, then hand the phone back to his sister. They never mentioned Richard, per the agreement, but Christopher heard about him anyway. Grandpa took us to the Art Institute Sunday. Grandpa helped Brandon with his college essay. Grandpa said he's proud of my grades. Each mention was a small knife, not from jealousy, from recognition of what he'd thrown away. April 15th, 2025. 7:37 a.m. Christopher walked home after his shift, exhaustion settling into his bones. Michigan Avenue in early morning, Joggers, commuters, the city waking up. He stopped outside a Starbucks. Couldn't afford the coffee, but he liked the smell. "Christopher?" He turned. Patricia Chen, his former CFO, stood there with a grande latte, staring at him like he was a ghost. "Patricia." Her eyes traveled over him, the janitor's uniform showing under his jacket, the weight loss, the exhaustion. I almost didn't recognize you." "Yeah, different life now." Awkward silence. She shifted her coffee cup. "I heard about everything. I'm sorry." "Don't be. I earned it." The honesty seemed to surprise her. "Christopher, I've worked with your father for 15 years. I've never seen him like he was that Christmas." "I know. But I've also never seen him so deliberate. He didn't do this in anger." "What do you mean?" Patricia glanced around, lowered her voice. "Your father had me pull audit reports going back 5 years. He found irregularities. Nothing illegal, but ethically questionable. Personal charges, inflated expenses, kickbacks." Christopher's stomach dropped. "He told you that?" "He documented everything." "But Christopher," she leaned closer, "he never filed charges, never reported anything. He just kept the file." "Why?" 3 months ago I asked him, should I forward this to authorities? You know what he said? Christopher shook his head. He said, "Not yet. Let's see if my son can find his way back first." The words hit Christopher like a truck. "He asks about you," Patricia continued. "Every Friday evening. Same questions. Has Christopher tried to contact me? I say no. Has he used family connections for easy jobs? No. What's he doing? I tell him, working honest labor, living simply. And he nods, doesn't say more. But Christopher," Patricia finished her coffee, "your father is watching. He's always watching." She left. Christopher stood there, coffee smell mixing with exhaust fumes, understanding crystallizing. Richard wasn't just punishing him. Richard was waiting. June 24th, 2025. Harold Washington Library. Christopher sat at a public computer, $1 per hour. He'd drafted this letter 47 times, deleted each one. Draft 48. Dear Richard, I'm writing this not expecting a response, not hoping for forgiveness, not asking for anything. 6 months ago, I pushed you to the ground in front of my children. I prioritized a business deal over your dignity. I betrayed 42 years of your love and sacrifice. I could explain my reasoning, the pressure, the ambition, the need to prove myself. But explanations are just excuses. The truth is simpler. I was a coward who valued status over character. These 6 months, I've been working night shifts, cleaning toilets in offices where I used to have meetings, living in a $650 studio with $130 monthly savings, learning dignity from coworkers like Maria, who works 2 jobs to feed her family. But also, understanding that self-worth comes from character, not bank accounts. Discovering I can respect myself as a janitor more than I ever did as CEO. Learning what earning something actually means. You were right about everything. Bradley didn't want to betray you. The company didn't need my innovation. It needed integrity. I wasn't ready for responsibility I took for granted. I don't know if I'll ever earn back your respect, but I want you to know I'm finally becoming the man you tried to raise. The children ask about you every week. I never speak ill of you. How could I? You're protecting them from my mistakes while teaching me about consequences. If we never speak again, please know I'm grateful. Grateful for 42 years of chances I squandered. Grateful for this final lesson I'm finally learning. With respect I no longer deserve, Christopher. He printed it. 75 cents for the envelope, 73 cents for the stamp. He walked to the post office, hands shaking. Certified mail, so he'd know it arrived. Then he waited. July 3rd, 2025. 7:18 a.m. Christopher returned to his apartment after shift. An envelope on his doorstep, Williams Construction letterhead. His hands trembled opening it. Christopher, I received your letter. I've read it 7 times. First, I've been monitoring your progress. I know about your job, your apartment, your budget. I know you haven't taken shortcuts or used family connections. I know you volunteer for the hardest shifts and help coworkers. Second, Patricia Chen's encounter with you was not accidental. I wanted to see how you'd react, with bitterness or humility. You chose humility. Third, The file of your ethical violations still exists. I could destroy your professional reputation permanently. I'm choosing not to. Not as a gift, but as faith that you won't repeat those mistakes. Fourth, I'm not ready to resume a relationship. I may never be. The man I loved as my son died on Christmas Eve 2024. I don't yet know if the man you're becoming can replace him. But I'm willing to watch, to wait, to see if this transformation is genuine. In 1 year, Christmas Eve 2025, if you're still on this path, send me another letter. Show me with choices, not words, that you've changed. If that letter proves genuine growth, we can discuss whether the name son can be earned back. Keep working. Keep growing. Keep being the father your children deserve, even from a distance. You asked if you still have my love. Christopher, you never lost it. You lost my respect. Love is given freely. Respect is earned through consistent action over time. Earn it back. Richard Williams. P.S. Emma asked if she could send you photos from her birthday. I said yes. Check your email. Christopher read it 3 times, then a 4th. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Not reconciliation, but possibility. He opened his email. 12 photos from Emma's 14th birthday party. In the background of every photo, Richard, smiling, present, loving his grandchildren, doing the job Christopher should have been doing. July, Christopher promoted to crew supervisor, $15.50 per hour. Still night shift, leading 6 people. August, first dinner with Emma and Brandon at a diner. His treat, $47, his entire week's food budget. They talked, really talked. Brandon, Dad, you seem different, better. September, Christopher enrolled in GED program at community college, helped Maria study for citizenship test. She passed, cried on his shoulder. October, Maria's daughter needed surgery, $800 uncovered. Christopher organized fundraiser among the crew, contributed $200 himself, 2 weeks of savings. Everyone pitched in. November, offered day shift management, $45,000 annual. He turned it down. Why? His boss asked, confused. I'm not ready. I need to learn to lead by example, not title. His boss stared. In 30 years, you're the first person to turn down a promotion. Then I'm learning from the right mistakes. December 20th, 2025. Christopher wrote his second letter. Richard, 1 year ago, I destroyed our relationship. Tonight, I want to tell you what I've learned. This year, I cleaned 4,380 toilets, saved $1,540, helped 3 coworkers study for citizenship, all passed, turned down a promotion I didn't deserve, became someone my children respect again. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm saying the man who pushed you is dead. I killed him deliberately. The man I'm becoming is someone I think you'd be proud of, not for achievements, but for character. If you're willing, I'd like to introduce you to him. Not as CEO, not as your heir, just as a man trying every day to deserve the name Williams, your son, earning it back 1 day at a time. Christopher. 6 p.m., December 24th, 2025. Christopher stood outside the Oak Park house, the house where he grew up. Suit from Goodwill, $18, cleaned and pressed carefully. Flowers for Susan's grave, $12. The door opened. Richard stood there, older, grayer, but still strong. They looked at each other. 1 full year. Christopher. Richard. Pause. May I come in? Richard studied him, saw the calloused hands, humble clothes, honest eyes. The children are inside. Brandon's home from his first semester. Emma's decorating the tree. I know, I didn't come for dinner. I came to ask, may I speak with you? 30 minutes, then I'll leave. Richard was silent, then stepped aside. 1 hour, study, let's talk. Emma shrieked from inside. Dad! She ran out, hugged him. Brandon followed, gave him a fist bump. Richard watched his son embrace his grandchildren, saw genuine love, humility, no entitlement. Maybe, Richard thought, maybe this is real. In the study, over coffee, they talked, not as CEO and fallen heir, as father and son, rebuilding. Christopher, I can't promise we'll be what we were. I don't want what we were, Richard. I want something honest, something earned. Richard extended his hand. Then let's start there. They shook. Not forgiveness yet, but a beginning. Outside, snow fell on Chicago. Inside, a family began to heal, one hard conversation at a time.